Thank you, Daryl. And good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So, the first thing I would say is that I would take note, Daryl, of one of the points you made just a moment ago, which is that number one, you are a former NFL football player, and two, one of your jobs is to keep everybody on time. Noted. Also, it should be known that I am not the keynote speaker. I am just giving welcoming remarks. The people who you really need to pay attention to are the actual keynote speakers, Edwin and Nico, who are going to be coming up right after I'm done. So all I'm going to do is set the stage a little bit for what is really going to be talked about at this conference. So first of all, I just want to say thank you to Rip. Thank you to the organizers. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here. Who am I? I lead a team of specialized journalists who cover international supply chains and international logistics. So our brand, if you will, within IHS Markit is the Journal of Commerce. The Journal of Commerce was the old daily shipping newspaper of New York City that has transitioned into a business intelligence provider where we write news, analysis, and we organize some of the largest events in the world focused principally on ocean containerized transportation, but also air cargo and all the end-to-end connections that are associated with container transportation, moving goods around the world, which is increasingly a highly dynamic. Are you able to hear me? Sorry about that. Okay. How's that? Is that any better? Okay, sorry about that. Okay, here we go. And in the course of covering international logistics, we have become increasingly interested in blockchain and what the potential is, but not only that, how it is likely to evolve, how it may evolve, how it may not evolve, and I just wanted to offer just a few observations that come out of our reporting. Roughly a year ago, we published you know how you see these infographics with all the logos of all the tech companies? You've probably seen those on LinkedIn, or we published one of those ourselves. All the known tech companies in international logistics. So we were following maybe 100 or a little more than 100 of those were in the infographic. And we published it about a year ago. There was not one blockchain company that was really on our radar screen and made it into that infographic. And that was a year ago when we published that. Now, you can't get away from blockchain even if you tried. It's in the news every day. It's coming at us from all directions. Whether you are talking about industries ranging from life sciences to agriculture, fashion, finance, energy, there's not a single industry out there in the world that isn't looking seriously at blockchain and the problems that blockchain can solve in those industries. If you just look at the cryptocurrency world, which is where blockchain came from, out of Bitcoin being the first practical application of blockchain, there was a conference in New York last week called Consensus. It's put on by a group called Coinbase, I think is the name of it. 8,500 people attended, up from 2,000 the year before. It was complete madness. Now that was more on the cryptocurrency side, more on the finance side. Very little there about, a legacy industry like transportation and logistics. But nevertheless, it was enormous attendance, enormous interest, and cryptocurrency is a close cousin to the type of blockchain applications that we talk about in a field like transportation and logistics. Does anyone know the current market value, the market capitalization of all the several thousand cryptocurrencies that there are right now? Anyone want to render a guess on that? Yes, right about 400 billion. 400 billion dollars is the market capital. That is like real money, big numbers, and but you have to look back at that and you have to say, okay, there's massive interest, potentially quite a bit of hype associated with $400 million in market capitalizations of cryptocurrencies, and yet a real gap between that and actually how blockchain is being used in the real world. And in fact, we are constantly on the lookout, to be honest with you, for actual final implementations of blockchain where blockchain is part of business as usual. Hey, guess what? That's something that we use. We don't, like Excel or like the internet. You just kind of use it. You don't think about it because it's entrenched technology. Those are very, very difficult examples to find, which really shows you how much we're really in the early days right now of blockchain. And But why the excitement? Why the all of the level of interest? And the reason is very simple. It solves problems, and it solves, in fact, many of the problems that in a field like logistics have been plaguing the industry for literally years. And whether it's creating visibility for cargo, knowing where cargo is at any given time, current status, being able to more efficiently handle finance documents, such as whether just bills of lading themselves, which are still largely in paper form. I mean, when we think about how inefficient international logistics is right now, all the major inefficiencies associated with it, all the added costs that are still associated with the way business works today, blockchain is going to solve, if it can be implemented, it's going to solve pretty much every one of those. And the big if being if it can actually be put into place. And this is why you see these, breathless hyperbole when blockchain is being described, when it's called the biggest technological breakthrough since the advent of the internet. Well, the difference between the internet and blockchain, which I like to think about, is that, the internet is really based on a common standard, and it obviously over the last 25 years took hold. It's part of everybody's daily life right now. It was based on a very simple standard that allows for fairly limited use. Okay, when I go on the internet, I will transact with individual parties, whether it's a bank or whether it's an airline or whether it's a retailer of some kind, and I will, or I'll consume information, and that's pretty much it. And as a result of that was relatively easy to achieve. But if you look at the standards that are going to be required for blockchain to take hold and to be actually used in an international supply chain, when you have multiple parties involved, when you have steamship lines, when you have railroads, truckers, ports, government authorities, and now everybody is going to have to agree on the standards that are going to be in place so that when they say, I buy or I do something, you are committing for all time to whatever it is that you have said that you're going to do, whether it's handing off chain of custody, whether it's providing information that is saying, okay, this product is as advertised, whatever it is, there is a commitment associated with the use of blockchain that is a very fundamental commitment that one party is making that is irrevocable. Well, what I'm going to have to agree on before I ever agree to that is going to be the standards that are going to underpin blockchain, and those standards have to be agreed to. And as it stands today, those standards are just in the very, very early stages of being discussed, and they're in the very early stages of being agreed to. And if they don't get agreed to, or if they can't be agreed to, then there's going to be headwinds in terms of how quickly and how widely blockchain gets implemented. But you can also see partly the momentum coming from frustration. You often hear in the international shipping world that the last major innovation that occurred was the container itself. 1957, when the first ship went from when Malcolm McLean's first ship went from Newark to here in Houston. It is often referred that actually that was the last major innovation, and so blockchain can potentially take us into the next realm. But we have real differences that exist as it stands today. For example, you have just the question of of visibility. Cargo visibility. Where is my cargo? Where is it right now? What's the status of it? With that, when is going to be the ETA? And what decisions can I make on the basis of that information? This is a so-called Holy Grail on the part of many BCOs, many shippers, like industrial companies, retail companies that are the big customers of transportation companies, and yet major logistics companies are not on the same page as to whether blockchain can be usable in visibility. If you look at the Maersk IBM venture that was announced earlier this year to create a blockchain system for end-to-end ocean container logistics, visibility is one of the core components of what that blockchain platform is going to do. But we have Kuehne+Nagel, the largest freight forwarder, so you have the largest ocean carrier saying visibility is something that is going to be important and blockchain can help us to improve visibility. You have the largest global ocean freight forwarder, Kuehne+Nagel, which is saying that visibility can be achieved without blockchain. And we have them on the record saying this as of about a month ago. We quoted their global head of ocean freight saying this in no uncertain terms. It's a pretty basic disagreement, wouldn't you think? And then when you look further at visibility, you say, okay, yeah, you have a lot of big customers, a lot of big companies are agitating for greater visibility in their supply chain, and yet over many years have not been willing to invest in it. So, for example, sensors that are on containers that allow you to monitor a container at any point in the process. The only people who are actually using those right now are the very high-end supply chains where the product inside the container is extremely expensive, and where there is economic value for the owner of those goods for being able to have real-time information about it. For everybody else, for the vast majority of them, they've never been willing to invest in that technology because they don't see a return from it. And so this raises the question as to where can blockchain economically create value? Yeah, it probably could solve the problem of visibility, but the thing is that there's a lot of investment associated with blockchain. The technology has to be developed. Are you looking at me? Okay. Just want to be sure. Okay, I'm aware. Okay. Oh, no, I see you loud. Plain. So visibility is used only for the highest end supply chains, for the most expensive goods. If it hasn't been used up to this point, largely for the great majority of cargo that's moving internationally, why do you need a blockchain solution which is going to require investment in developing the technology and investment in implementing the technology? So one of the things that we're going to have to figure out, those of us who are trying to find greater efficiencies in the supply chain and seeing what technologies, potentially blockchain, can help us to do that, is going to be to evaluate essentially the cost benefit. And that, folks, is no different from the evaluation of any technology that any company has ever considered implementing, because there should be a payoff from using that technology. And if the payoff isn't there, well then why do it to begin with? So something to consider. My colleague, Eric Johnson, who just joined us recently, who is our lead subject matter expert in logistics technology on our team, he believes that the real payoff that is going to exist in blockchain is all around finance, not necessarily the banking world. He's really talking about trade finance and about anything that is close to the transfer of money being able to be transferred more quickly, money being able to be transferred without the intervention of an intermediary. His thesis is that that's where the business case is going to make the most sense, and that is where the investment in developing blockchain technology is going to be initially most justified. Now that hasn't happened yet. We'll see, but that's his premise. And so As we go forward into the conference over the next couple days, we're really treading new ground here. Blockchain is very new. The estimates that I've seen and perhaps many of you have seen these as well. They've been fairly widely circulated by any number of interested parties, like consultants or whatever, holding themselves out as experts in blockchain. Basically, say that we're in the beginning of what could be potentially a 10 to 20 year period of implementing this technology. Now, I think that we're at the point where there's enough momentum around it, and there is enough view as to the possibility that blockchain can solve the biggest problems that we face in the transportation and logistics and supply chain world, that the momentum will in fact take us forward. And we're not going to wake up tomorrow and say, blockchain, that was just a quick fad and now it's gone and now we're going to be on to the next thing, quantum computing or whatever it is. There's real momentum associated with blockchain without a question, even if there are very few actual cases where it's being used, and even though we're reading about it nonstop, 24/7. So I think that the subjects that we're talking about are real. I think it's not a waste of anybody's time. But we're really laying the groundwork here. We're really at the beginning of a very long journey. And so we're kind of feeling our way, trying to figure out kind of where this is going. And so there's going to be a lot of discussion where there's probably going to be a certain lack of certainty and a lot of theory, certain amount of speculation. And that could easily be dismissed like, well, we really don't know where this is going, which would be fine if, in fact, the fundamental subject of what we were talking about was a fad and was, ephemeral and is going to, could go away anytime. I don't think that's the case. So I think that even if the answers to the questions are not as concrete as one might like, actually, they're important answers, and it's going to be important to think about what people are saying and to think about how it all relates to our own businesses and where our own organizations are going, and how we can make use of this very interesting subject and technology that we're talking about. So there you go. Daryl, I don't know how I did. I hope I'm within time. Thank you very much. Thank you all. I look forward to the remainder of the conference.